After I got found guilty of my federal charge, I was put in Orient Road Jail. And as soon as I got in Orient Road Jail, I started collecting these affidavits from inmates that my co-defendants were in these jails, right? And what the DEA was doing was they were going around to my co-defendants, some that didn't even know me, never even seen me before in their life. And he's showing them my ID, trying to get them to testify against me because I'm taking the federal government to trial. So what the prosecutor ended up doing when I started collecting these affidavits and giving them to my attorney, they moved me from Orient Road Jail way down to Fort Myers. A jail way down in Fort Myers. And this was at Christmas time of 2004. I just got found guilty in September. This is Christmas time. They bring me way down there. So now I go on a hunger strike because, man, I'm like, what the hell? You know, this is bullshit. You moved me 4 hours away from my home at Christmas time. Like, I just lost trial, you know, and all of this. So, but while I'm down there, I'm collecting affidavits from inmates. Inmates are coming to me like, man, I know your co-defendants. They were in here playing spades, talking about, no, you can't say this, you got to say that, and blase squad, because they were worried about trying to get their time off. You know what I mean? That's all they were worried about was doing whatever the DEA told them to do so that they could get all of this time off. Didn't matter if they lied, who they sent to prison, did not matter. They were just worried about themselves. They didn't want to do these 40, 50 years that they were looking at. Right? So now they moved me from Fort Myers out to Orlando now. Now I'm way out in Orlando. And I meet a dude named Angelo LaRocco. This dude comes up to me, right, in the pod. And he's like, hey, man, I know you don't know me, but I'm your co-defendant. And I'm up under Joe's case because we had two pyramids in our conspiracy. Right. And I was up under my homeboy, and Joe was just a fuck boy that they were partnered together. You know what I mean? So he comes up to me, says this here, whoop to whoop. I'm like, man, listen. I say, I got some shit that this whole case is going to be thrown out. This is what I'm telling him. I'm like, man, listen, I got these motherfuckers, man. I got over 20-some affidavits from random inmates in all kinds of different jails that they've moved me to, stating how the DEA lied, how they coerced statements, how these dudes were just sitting around at these tables talking about testifying against me and all of this stuff, because that's illegal. You can't do that. If you got two people that were testifying against me, they can't be housed together in the same cell. How they're sitting around playing spades, talking about, nah, when I say this, you got to make sure because this is what they're telling me. So I have affidavits saying all of that. And I got an evidentiary hearing that the judge approved that he wants to see all of this evidence. Right? So he's like, man, that's great. He goes, what do you need me to do? I'm like, man, listen. Because he came and told me how the DEA agent, Tim Lutz, came and was showing him my ID. This is how he knew what I looked like. Right. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, because again, I've never seen this little fucking worm before in my life. So now we're sitting in the pod. He's like, man, that's great. He says, but you know, I'm pleading out. He says, I'm taking a plea. So he's like, man, I just want to call my grandfather and run this by him and see what he says, you know, because I don't want to mess up my chances. You know what I mean? So I'm like, cool, you know, whatever. I say, but this is going to throw out everything. It's going to overturn the case. They got to throw it all out because it's all been tampered. So he comes back to me after he makes his call. He's like, listen, man, he goes, I really don't want to mess with this. You know, I'm just going to do what I do. I'm like, okay, cool. Man, 15 minutes after he come and told me that, a cop comes up to me and tells me that I need to be isolated and I got to go into this room. So now he puts me into this room, right? And Angelo comes up to me. He's at the door. He's like, man, I don't know what's going on, man. I'm going to go find out. So I'm sitting there watching. And as soon as he goes up to the guard, he's got his tray, all of his shit. The guard takes him out of the room. And then they come and let me out of the tank. I'm like, man, what the hell was that about? He's like, man, we just got to separate y'all. So again, I still don't put in my head what's going on because I'm just so ignorant of all of this rat snitch shit, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know until my evidentiary hearing comes up, right? The day finally comes up with my evidentiary hearing, and they bring back all of those witnesses. They got to bring all these dudes that testified against me at trial, all my homeboys. They got to bring them all back from their prisons now. So they're mad because they know what it is when they get back to their prisons now. You know what I mean? Because when you leave prison to go back to court, you know what that is. Right. So now these dudes had to leave their prisons to come testify again at this evidentiary hearing. So I got state inmates that are coming to testify for me, right? That they got their own thing going on, but they're willing to sacrifice what they got going on to come testify for me, a person they don't even know, at this evidentiary hearing, because that is how fucked up the feds were in my case. That these dudes were willing to risk their appeals that they were going back to court for to come testify for me because what they saw was so disgusting. You know what I mean? Right. But somewhere now they bring me over by myself. Just all alone. They got my witnesses in with their witnesses. And they bring them all over in a van. Now when my witnesses get over here, guess what happens? Story change. I want to plead the fifth. I don't want to talk about it. I want to plead the fifth. You know what I mean? This is what they're coming out on the stand and saying this now. So my lawyer's like, what's going on? I'm like, I have no clue. But my witnesses don't want to talk. None of them. So they go through all of their witnesses talking about how I'm making all of this up, blah, blah, blah. They never told me this, you know, all of this stuff. And then the last witness they bring on the stand is Angelo LaRocco. Angelo LaRocco comes up on the stand talking about how stupid I am for going to trial. Everybody knows that I'm guilty, right? And then he's like, I met Thomas in Orlando, and Thomas approached me talking about he wanted to give me some cookies to write down this stuff on this affidavit. I mean, he went all the way in. Talking about some commissary cookies. I'm trying to buy his affidavit with commissary cookies. And all of this is in transcripts. Wow. I got my transcripts right there on the desk. All of this is in transcripts. So the judge then, after his ruling on this evidentiary hearing, is that, well, according to Mr. LaRocco's statements, that if Thomas was willing to buy his testimony for commissary cookies, then I can only imagine that he was doing the same with all these other affidavits. And he said, as far as these inmates that are coming to testify, as you know, these are just felons that are coming to look out for other felons. This is what the judge said. No proof that I was buying these people. There's nothing. It's just that this is what these rats said. And the judge, of course, is going to listen to the government witnesses because they all get all their time off. They get to go to camps. They get to go stay close to their family. Meanwhile, they send me to some of the furthest, worst prisons in America.